So in this video, I'm going to show you how to create an assessment, and I'm going to do that from resources. But of course, then once you're in resources, you can copy that to your course so that it's available for your students to take. One of the things to keep in mind is that an assessment, while it can be a test, it can also be a learning tool. And so there's a lot of different options within assessments. And I've got other videos that show you how to do some of the different questions. This is really going to be about the setting, showing you the settings and how to preview your question and some of those different settings, what they look like for the student. So you're in your resources and you've got a few different types of resources. Likely you're going to be in your personal resources, perhaps in group resources, if these are shared documents that you're working with others and collaborating with others on. So you're going to click on the Add Resources drop-down menu and select Add Assessment. Test quiz is going away. They've been saying that for a while and it's still here, but it is going away at some time. And so Add Assessment is what we suggest you use. So this is what it looks like when you're in resources. It doesn't give you all the options if you're creating this in that it does in a course, because some of the other options are things like what is the grading category and is it available and disabled and enabled and things of that nature. Well, you don't need that in the resources because it's not in a category and it's not for a grade at this time. When you copy it to the course, those options will then appear and you'll have to complete that at that time. So you submit and it brings you to your setup. Notice at the top there's only 2 tabs. When you're in your course, there'll be 2 additional tabs that have to do with grading. In resources, there's no grading, so those tabs are not present yet. So you're going to put your instructions here. And let's look at some of the settings. Assessment has a time limit that could be necessary or not. Assessment questions are randomly ordered. That can be helpful as well, depending upon your needs. And then you show possible points for each question during attempt. I like that on, but and it is the default setting, but there could be a reason to turn that off if you don't want them worrying about that particular avenue. Students can flag questions for review. You know, on a paper test, I often, if I was having a hard time with a question, I might put a star on that question and come back to it. And this is hard to do digitally, and so this allows you to do that. You can flag a question that you want to come back and look at later. Eliminating answer choices is also helpful. It doesn't make it completely disappear, and so the student could still select that answer choice, but if it's distracting them, they can kind of get it out of their view slightly, and I'll show you what that looks like as well. Calculator, there is both a basic or a scientific calculator available, not a graphing calculator. And you can use a ruler if you want your students to use a ruler, if they need to use a ruler. A protractor is also an option. And now this text-to-speech toolbar with screen masking during attempt. This is really helpful for a lot of our scholars that have oral testing. And so this is a good one to put on your test. You can make a copy of a test and then have so if you're making a regular test and a modified test, you could leave the settings on the regular test and leave it as a no, and then on the modified test, make it a yes. And so that would provide that accommodation to your scholars. And so then you also have students can highlight text. That could be helpful especially if they're reading passages within an assessment, certainly helpful and a possibility. I'm going to go ahead and put that one on there. I'm also going to put the text-to-speech on there so that you can see what that looks like in the assessment. And students can use a notepad. Now, allow students to review results that, yes, no, or yes with correct answers. I seldom do that. And actually, when they're in school and at the school and all the students are taking the test on that same day, or even maybe a different day, I don't usually allow this at first, because a student finishes first period, they take the test, and they can then look through the test and see what they've done and didn't do. And if they're looking through that on their phone, especially at lunch or something like that, then they can show it to others. And so that would be a problem. In this scenario that we're currently in with at-home learning, that it may not be such a big difference. And so letting them see that may be helpful. I would, in school, I would let them see that, but only after the tests are all completed for the day. And so then I would change that setting, and students could then go back and look to see which ones they got right and wrong. Number of attempts. So especially if we're thinking of an assessment as a learning tool and something that they can use to learn. And so we give them some content and then we want to see how we want them to be able to kind of see what they've understood and not understood. We let them see that they missed some questions. They can then go back and review and then retake the assessment a few different times. And once you've allowed multiple attempts, you then can choose what is going to be the grade. Is it the last score or their highest score? Of course, if you do last score, you may be encouraging them to not try again. So keep those things in mind. You've got to make sure you hit save, otherwise this is not saved. You hit save, it says, okay, it's been saved, and then it gives you the option to add more questions right here. Of course, you can go to the top and click on the Add Questions tab there. So I'm not going to get into how to create different types of questions. I do that in some other videos, but I am going to create one question, sample question real quick so we can preview the assessment and I show you what those different settings and tools do for the scholars. So there is the preview question button there, so you can look at it while you're within a particular that question to see what that looks like. But I want to see, oh, I didn't put a correct answer. The nice thing about that, it doesn't let you go away from your question without doing that. So you can see here, you can also change the point value. So that's an option depending upon the number of questions, how you may want to do that. You can also just leave every question as 1 point, and it'll still give them a percentage based on what they've done. But this preview button here is really helpful. If you're not sure what something's going to look like for your students, you can preview the assessment and go through it and make sure everything, the formatting looks the way you want it. So up here we have our text-to-speech bar. They can minimize that so it's not in their way if they need to. They can also move it around to different parts of the screen so that it helps them. But they just so you can see it'll read through the question for them, and it's fairly fluid and it works pretty well. There's some other options. They can and they can stop the speech. They can screen mask. So they can kind of focus here on a particular part that they want and focus. That helps them to kind of really focus and not get as distracted. So those are some options that you may want to use. Let's say I'm having a hard time with this question. I can flag that for review. Say I'm going to come back to that. I can eliminate, oh, I know D is not the right answer, so I can eliminate that, but they can still see the answer choice. This is what the calculator looks like. They can drag it and use, so you can see kind of this is what the scientific calculator looks like. Here's the ruler. They can move things around, measure something. Protractor is also available. They can also move that. And let's see, notepad. So let's eliminate the protractor here with the notepad so they can take notes on this question. And then they can also go full screen. So what if they flag this question, what does it look like? Well, this top button reviews over all the questions. There's only one question on this assessment, but it shows all the questions that they flagged so they can then look, okay, wait, I need to go back to question 1 and 7 or whatever it is that they need to do. And so notice there, that was the review. So it says I'm finished, and that shows that I'm done, and I can close the preview and go back here. And that is how we kind of, those are some of the different settings. Now, what do we do with this assessment? So I'm back to my resources, and how do I get this into my course? Well, this is my pretend assessment that I just made. Add to course. That is how I would add it to my course. But let's say I want to make 2 versions of this test. I copy it to, and I can copy it anywhere I want to. As a matter of fact, I can copy it right here where I'm at, and you'll see there's a second one. So I want to right away, first thing I want to do is edit this, and maybe it's pretend assessment M for modified perhaps. And so now I know, okay, right now it's exactly the same, but I can go back in now to this and I can edit. I don't have to rewrite every question. The questions are all there, and maybe I need to eliminate an answer choice and save it. Or maybe I need to change the vocabulary a little bit, simplify the vocabulary in that question a little bit, then I do so. And that's, now I know it's my modified test. So finally, you'll want to send that to your course. And so you add to course, and I'm going to add it to my sandbox course. And these are the settings that would, if you create this test or this assessment within a course, you're going to have these options show up when you first initially click on add assessment. These options aren't here in your resources because you don't need it. But now that I'm putting it in a course, I need to think about what category is this, and what's the scale? Is it going to be numeric or alpha, A, B? You know, what kind of grading category is, and then also what grading period is it? So this, while it's going to my sandbox course, it's still ongoing PD. If it was going to an actual course, it would be, you know, the 5th 6 weeks or 6 weeks, depending upon the time of year. And you can even select which folder you want it to go into directly. And if you have created that folder as unpublished and you put it into an unpublished folder, that way when you move it over there, it's still unpublished. Notice it does not give me the option to enable or disable that yet. That is not until you get into the course. So if this course is, I don't know if this folder is published or unpublished, but I'm going to now add it to that course and into that folder. So I'm going to go up to my courses, go to Sandbox. It is unpublished folder, and there's that assessment. I cannot, I can enable, but I cannot publish this assessment because it is in an unpublished folder or a hidden folder. And so I can enable a submissions, but I either need to publish the whole folder or move that assessment out of that folder before I can publish that assessment. Now, that assessment, because I published the folder, is published. I can choose to unpublish, but I don't want to do that. Or I can also do that here in the editing. It's enabled, everything's good. I could change it to unpublished here if I wanted to. And there's a few options here with submissions. You can enable it until a certain time. You can enable it from a certain time to a certain time. So if you want to set up, okay, they can't start on it until Monday at 9 a.m. and they have until Friday at 4 p.m. or whatever that is. And so you'd set those dates and time. And you can select a due date. So we're going to save those changes. Oh, I did not. Oh, I selected until from, but didn't fill out that information. I'm just going to enable it and save it. So that is how you create an assessment within your resources and then copy it to a course.